Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to a view replay featuring the mighty Doom Turtle. I think this is also the first time I've had a replay with a random game on the Ghost Town map, which of course started off life as a symmetrical tournament map. It is inarguably the most balanced map in the game from north to south, but it doesn't necessarily translate as it being particularly fun to play. It is, however, in theory quite a good map for a tank like the Doom Turtle, as driven here by the Grisha Inquisition, who I do think we've had on the channel before at some point. There is, at the moment anyway, basically no threat of getting flanked. Obviously he's come to the town, he could have gone to the flanks, which are, I think, arguably a little more important. If you lose the flanks, you've pretty much lost the game, you end up getting surrounded in the town. But you still need some people in the town to slug it out, and as far as slugging it out goes, being in a top tier T95 is a pretty good place to be. Now, at least to begin with, his armour does hold up pretty well. He's also making careful use of places he knows he can pen for the most part. There are a couple of sloppy shots in this one, I will say that. Like that shot against the T29 was unlikely to go through, but the first one where he basically just overmatched the turret roof was fairly well placed. And then a nice snapshot there into the angled beak of that Object 257, which is of course one of the enemy top tier heavies. And that thing, you know, does also itself have pretty good armour, but not when you negate the effectiveness by angling it like that. So yeah, this is a really good place to be right now in a T95. I mean, getting close is always a bit risky, because it makes people's access to your own weak spots that much easier. But if you're getting in their face, if you are making them panic a bit because, oh my god, there's a T95 and it's got a whacking great big gun and it's nasty and ouchy and hurty, then chances are that they won't be able to react well enough to actually aim for those weak spots, and that Object 257 was a prime example. A nice shot into the commander's cupola on the T32, who really should have reacted to, you know, a T95 trying to stop and aim carefully. This Tiger, King Tiger C, however, you don't need to stop and aim, that's just pen anywhere, basically. It's the Tiger 2 with the long 88, it's basically a historical setup Tiger 2. And that means that the armour is actually kind of okay for tier 7. I mean, it's still not exactly super thickly armoured, but it certainly stands up better for its tier than the Tiger 2, the tech tree equivalent at tier 8. I mean, really the only major difference between them is in the firepower. So now we come up against a much tougher opponent. I mean, he's finished off that low health T30. Dangerous gun, in fact the same gun as this, but it always feels a bit of a waste to fire a high alpha shell to get the kill shot on a low health enemy. But in the process of trying to pen that Type 4, actually takes an AP, a premium AP penetration for 750 exactly, which I think is that the average for that? I don't know. So yeah, that was kind of ouchy. They've now switched to HE shells. That did nothing by comparison. But at this stage, he becomes horribly aware that, yeah, that's a Progetto with shots on his flank, so he takes a little bit more damage from that. And then, well, if you notice the minimap behind him, yeah, the T25 too takes this opportune moment to plant one in his rear. This is the stage where things have thinned out considerably. A bunch of people on both teams have died. The teams have spread out, although they've largely won the town at this stage. There's a couple of heavies down in the corner tackling some people there. The TS5 is also rather beat up, but yeah, the Type 4 is pretty much the last big threat in the town, and everything else is on the flanks. They do have some of their own tanks on flanks as well, but if they can clear up the town, then that will at least give them some kind of numbers advantage. And there's enough usable terrain that even that Progetto, so long as they're decent health, should have an okay time overall working around the flank and mopping things up a bit. So a bit of a lucky pen with AP there. I mean, he did load one APCR shell, which ended up going completely wastefully into the back of the T95/2. But with this reload, it's not like you're going to go back to an AP shell for that. So, yay, he kind of wasted that APCR shell, but sometimes you just have to. Sometimes you don't have a choice. And then getting an AP shell into the turret of that Type 4, yeah, that was fairly lucky. But there's a good chance that the Type wouldn't have been able to do enough damage to kill him unless he got another lucky AP pen. Talking of lucky pens, yeah, goodbye Leopard PTA. They were tracked, so that was a nice, easy shot overall. But clearly, they had a damaged ammo rack, which is not really a surprise in a PTA, and so big shell meets damaged ammo rack, and thrown a little RNG on top of that, and kablooey. So that was quite a good value shot, all in all. That was over 800 damage done and the kill, although you can roll that high anyway, of course. So we've sped up this last little bit. The Progetto clears up the last King Tiger C, and it's just the Scorpion left at this stage. And if you guessed that Grisha's going to not get there in time, you would be entirely correct. This is a good city fight for the T95 on this map. You know, it might not be a popular map overall, but for the T95 in particular, it could have certain advantages, unless your team collapses early and you end up getting surrounded, at which point you might be a bit boned. But yeah, when it comes to actually then hunting down the last tanks on the flanks, you don't really have the speed to do it. Still though, aside from one or two duff shots, in fact I think there was really only 2 shots that were particularly questionable. The T30 and the T29, the ones that just, you know, weren't really going to hit. And I think the T31, if he dipped it a bit lower, maybe he could have, would have, but it was a bit of a snapshot, I suppose. But yeah, overall, I mean, nearly double the damage of most of the other people on the team. Let me rephrase that. He had over double the damage of most of the people on his team, bar one, and very good score to boot, alongside the Ace Tanker, High Caliber and Top Gun. So yeah, he really did just eat the heart out of the enemy team that were in the town, and that Object 257 in particular, that was just like 3 shots and done. And so that was a major part of the roadblock in front of them, just taken out in fairly short order. I do also want to say, before I wrap this up, that I have spared you, dear viewer. I strongly contemplated leaving in some of the unsped up bits and having a little bit of a poetry reading, as I have done in the past with some of the delightful works of William McGonagall, but I sat down and read a couple of stanzas of a couple of poems, and I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was feeling far too merciful today, apparently. So instead, I just did some editing tricks, and you'll just have to imagine the horrors that you were spared. Anyway, so hopefully you have enjoyed this video, and the lack of William McGonagall, which is always a thing to be celebrated. And if you did, you can do all the usual things down underneath the video, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.